If you're a serious hunter and you haven't tried Hex yet, this is the edge you're missing. Hunters have always talked about animals having a sixth sense, feeling you before they ever see you. Hex works by completely blocking your body's natural energy, helping you get closer without tipping them off. Most hunters don't believe it at first, until they hunt in it. And once they do, it makes them believers fast. Go to hexhunting.com. That's HECS hunting.com. And use code WAYPOINT to save $20 on a full Hex system.
When you want your spring break to feel like... and your kids' pool day to feel like... and your hotel bed to feel like... ooh, and room service to feel like... because at Hilton, hospitality feels like...
Your cabana's ready. Would you like fresh towels?
It matters where you stay. Book now at Hilton.com. Hilton, for the stay.
The Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. And right now they have their spring turkey sale going on, 25% off everything on the website through March 29th. Again, check that out at huntworthgear.com. So today's podcast, we are talking about the other side of the one buck. So I was able to go to the NRC meeting this past month, so in March, and it was interesting to see how the meetings are run and kind of what the process is, and I can see how things can very easily be skewed one way or the other. I was not very impressed by the arguments against the one buck. And, I mean, there's a lot to be said by showing up in force. I was very impressed by the committee, the commissioners there, being attentive, paying attention, asking questions, everything that we've kind of talked about on these podcasts in the past. But we've kind of been criticized here on the podcast about not having anybody on to kind of argue the point of not having one buck or going against that. So I wanted to do that. So I had my buddy Matt Michaleck. He's Hunt Pod. He's on Instagram, and he's always kind of just playing devil's advocate against this stuff. He's always posting stats and studies kind of against the one buck. And it's really hard to tell like where he lands on it. And then when I said I was going to bring him on, he has a friend who's a wildlife biologist in the fish space, but he kind of thinks that, in Michigan, we kind of have it made with having two bucks and the amount of deer that we have. He hunts multiple states. He is here in Michigan, and grew up hunting in the UP, hunts all over Michigan. So it's a very good discussion from two very rational individuals, just kind of talking about the other side of the one buck. And I wasn't able to find really anybody through social media that, I thought had any rational or logical points that weren't personal, that I felt were like warranted. That, there's a lot of people saying, well, it's just me, or I want this, or I want that. Lots of things that weren't on the table. Lots of people that were just saying things that weren't, didn't serve, the resource, didn't serve the community as a whole. It was just kind of like their opinion, or it just kind of helped them or a small pocket of individuals. And so I wanted to talk to someone who could look at it and have a conversation from a broad spectrum. So fun discussion. It was nice to be able to kind of talk through these things. And I do see both sides. But again, I'm of the persuasion that, something has to be done to move the state of Michigan in a direction to kind of balance out the buck to doe ratio, to kind of manage the herd, to kind of get things back to where we quote unquote need it to be. And if this is the first step and this is what is on the docket, as long as we have some sort of data, as long as we're collecting data and we are using that with the assumption that it's going to be actionable data, I think that this is going to be helpful. So again, really a good discussion on kind of both sides of it, and being able to play devil's advocate on the one buck kind of argument, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I think you guys are going to enjoy it. I think you can probably see both sides of it, because I kind of came away from it thinking like, oh, maybe we do have it pretty good here, but at the end of the day, something needs to change, and the discussion didn't necessarily change my mind. So you guys be the judge. Let us know, and as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for the support. Enjoy the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. I was going to have Nate on here today because we just were at the last NRC meeting. He had some stuff come up, so he couldn't be on here. I'll get into like my experience with the first meeting that I went to. But we've been kind of, I don't want to say like criticized, but there's been people along the way saying like, hey, you haven't had any opposition. You haven't had any discussion about like not changing to the one buck thing. You've only had people that are beating this drum, and Josh, Elliott, any of the guys that were there, Jordan, are probably going to be like, what are you doing? Why are you putting this information out there right now? But I think it's important to kind of like talk through the whole thing. And to be honest with you, Facebook, I have yet to see anybody with a rational thought, with any good information that doesn't seem like biased, or that doesn't seem like it doesn't seem absolutely 100% personal. It doesn't seem like it's for the good of anything other than what they truly believe. And so my idea was, the only person that has played like devil's advocate in this whole thing is Matt Michaleck. He's been on here before a couple times. Shared many a camp with him for deer and elk as well. And he's the stat guy, and anything, it's like he just likes to stir the pot, I think. So I don't even really know what his thoughts are on this. I know that he probably doesn't think that quote unquote Michigan's product is the best deer hunting product out there, but by the things he posts and the attitude that he presents, you wouldn't know that. Does that sound about right, Matt?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I like to argue with people to kind of wrap my own thoughts around what is actually best. Like, to get the pros and cons all out there, you got to argue it from both sides to figure out like kind of where you're going to sit. I mean, with anything, especially anything in politics, this is a pretty political thing.
Yeah. And then so I reached out to Matt and I said, hey, do you want to come on here and talk with Nate and I? And he said, yeah, sure. What time? And then he said, what do you think about having a biologist on there? And I said, yeah, that sounds great. But then in the back of my mind, I thought, well, shit, I have no idea like where this is going to go, because I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of background. And I mean, I would like someone that has, some sort of background, but also it becomes very difficult if you've got someone in front of you that's just like, there are some people that I've had on the podcast before, that I don't want to say like will baffle you with bullshit, but if they just have a whole bunch of stats and numbers that you don't have anything to refute it with, you're just sitting there going, oh, well, I guess, whatever. So, I mean, this could go either way. So we have Billy Keiper here, And Billy, we'll get some introduction from you. So thanks for coming on here. And, so tell us a little bit about your background and we'll get into a little bit of the discussion.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I think this is a pretty cool opportunity. And I want to be abundantly clear, so I'm not a wildlife biologist. I don't work for DNR. I do work for the state. I work for Eagle. I'm an aquatic biologist. I'm the state's aquatic invasive plant specialist by trade. So I deal with stuff in the water. My background, I've got a degree in fisheries and wildlife management. My master's is in aquatic ecology. And the reason I went the aquatic route is so I didn't have to work in hunting season, to be completely honest. So yeah, I've got a lot of, I feel like I can bring a kind of a more rigorous scientific kind of view at this, but I'm also a diehard deer hunter. Like, family comes first in life, no doubt. Deer hunting is a close second. Like, I'm eaten up by deer hunting. I think a lot of us are. So,
yeah. So, for yourself, Matt said, you hunt a lot, a bunch of different states, all of that. So what is your hunting background? And I guess your, I don't want to say like hunting style, but like your hunting like mentality, where we'll say, Michigan, got to get my buck guy. It's brown, it's down. Or age class, I'll shoot a 17-year-old spike if it comes by because I just want the challenge of killing an old deer.
yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I bring a lot to the table there. Like, so I grew up in the UP. I spent the first 25 years of my life hunting in the eastern UP. I still got a farm up there. Still get up there to hunt quite a bit. I live in southern Michigan now, which is kind of the deer mecca of Michigan. I travel out of state, usually to a state or two every year. I was just counting out. I've hunted 8 different states for whitetails, all bow hunting, mostly public land. I hunt both public and private here. I hunt in 5 different counties in Michigan, both public and private. I lease a place with Matt. I've got another lease. I hunt a lot of permission properties, and I hunt a lot of public here too. So I've kind of seen the gamut of that. As far as bow hunting, I started bow hunting pretty young. I think this is my this will be my 32nd season. I've been bow hunting a long time. So always have been a diehard bow hunter, and I don't see that ever changing. I just love it. And as far as my style, it's definitely changed over time. I grew up in the UP, and I still bait up there. So I've killed plenty of deer over bait. I have nothing against that. I hunt food plots. I do that stuff. But most of my game anymore is mobile. I can't tell you the last time I've sat in the same tree in a season anymore. So it's changed a lot there. I hunt a lot of different properties. I try not to overhunt them, and I've had really good luck. I've been on a pretty good tear for a while now. I usually tag out in Michigan in bow season, but I have several of the last, half a dozen years or so pretty easy. And I've shot some nice deer. Like, typically I've got fairly high standards, I feel like, for myself, and generally try to shoot 3.5-year-old deer or better, if possible. But I'm also an opportunity hunter too. Like, my general rule is, comes down the runway and it makes me super excited about it, I don't care. I'm just going to shoot it. Pretty hard on the doe population. I love shooting does. We eat venison a lot in our household. We typically want 5 or 6 in the freezer for ourselves each year. I mean, we live on venison. So.
Our buddy Josh Mapes was the only guy I knew that tagged out on does when they opened up 10 doe tags. Then I met Billy, and I met 2 guys that tagged out on doe tags, because it's
still short of my goal, right? You can shoot 20 in Michigan. I broke double digits once or twice now, but I haven't gotten to 20 yet. So, which is, I understand, is ridiculous, but.
So from a conservation standpoint, so from a biologist standpoint, as we would hope from a Prop G standpoint of how we're managing the resource, and it sounds ridiculous to me to be like the mouthpiece to be like, oh, we need to be scientifically sound, blah, blah, blah. Because that's just not how I've ever kind of looked at this, because honestly, I never really thought, until recently, that you could, as a hunter, as an individual, make any sort of meaningful change in any of these regulations, or even to look at it from this standpoint. But from the conservation side of it, like, when you're dealing with fish and populations, bag limits, whatever, and you were to transfer that over to like our deer population, like, how do you see the management that we're doing in Michigan?
It's kind of, I feel like I probably have a different perspective than a lot of folks here. Having spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of my rut out of state. I've seen some really good places. I've hunted Iowa several times and some in Kansas and a lot of really good places. And I'll be honest, I'd still rather hunt here than any of those other states. Our opportunities are great. We've got a lot of deer. Sure, you're not going to kill the 150. I've also never killed the 150 in Kansas, and I've been there several times, or Iowa. So, I think what we've got really going for us here is we have really good habitat. We have better habitat for whitetails, a lot more edges, small wood lots, overgrown fields. We've got a good mix of habitat versus a lot of the other states. I think we've got a really solid deer population. We probably have too many deer versus other places I go. Ohio is a great example. Like, you'll go several deer, several sits without even seeing a deer in some of those places. Like, so we're very fortunate here. And I get we all want change, right? So, but I also think we need to take a broader look at what we have and be pretty thankful for the opportunities we have. And it's really improved a lot. 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said that. We've got a lot different mindset. We've changed a lot as hunters. We've matured. A lot of people are passing deer now. Like, I remember there was a time in my life, like, I grew up in the UP. Shooting a year and a half old buck was an accomplishment, especially in bow hunting. Now, I've passed up 2.5-year-old deer in the UP, which I didn't think I'd ever do. So, and it's not uncommon for people to pass up 2.5-year-old deer here. That's a nice, basket rack 8-point that I'd have killed for a lot of our life, and a lot of young hunters should. That's an accomplishment. Be proud of that. So,
but again, like, so from a apples to apples, right? From your biologist standpoint, looking at, say, the fish population and the deer population.
Yeah.
From a management standpoint, be it, invasive species or overpopulation or, things taking over with, the ability for, like, carrying capacity of, certain streams, bodies of water, like whatever. Like, how do you see that with the deer population in these areas outside of, say, just like kind of like the gut, how we feel because we love deer hunting so much?
No, that's a really good question. And whether it's fish or wildlife or whatever kind of, natural population you're talking about, the girls run the show. It's all about the females in the population, right? So males are great to have. They're important to have, but they play a small role when it comes to like population growth and control and carrying capacity, birth rates, death rates, all that. Like, it's really based on females in the population. And we have a lot of deer. We have way too many does. No doubt about it. Like, you don't see, especially in southern Michigan, right? You go into a place that's been logged. You don't see hardwood regeneration or young generation forests anymore. Like, we've just got too many deer. We've got the hardwoods that are left. It seems like they're overbrowsed. We've got, the browse that is coming in is mostly invasive species like multiflora rose. It's those species that can outcompete that are non-desirable. You don't see wildflowers are a great example. A lot of native wildflowers that just aren't present anymore because you've got such a heavy grazing pressure from deer population. Drive down the road here anywhere. How many dead deer are on the road? It's crazy. Like, you don't see that out of state, not even close.
And so if that were the case with fish, how would you manage that population?
Yeah, generally, I'm not a fish biologist anymore, but just based on my training, you increase the bag limit, lower the size limit, and increase the bag limit. So, yes, you can put restrictions on. You can't really, don't typically separate male to female fish here, but, from a herd management standpoint, males don't play a much of a role in that sense. That is for our personal desires. And what we're trying to get out is from a trophy standpoint. But it doesn't really impact the herd. So having bigger bucks is great. I love shooting bigger bucks too, but it doesn't impact the herd at all. So when you restrict even more harvest on that, I think part of the theory is, right, you limit the number of bucks. Like, if we go down to 1 buck, then we may shoot more does. Man, you can shoot all the does you want now. Nobody's shooting 20 deer a year or 10 does a year, hardly at all. But people aren't doing it. Most hunters, I haven't looked at the numbers this year, but a lot of hunters aren't shooting more than 2 or 3 deer. So,
Yeah, and
The
so
opportunities are there, and we're still
like,
not doing a good job at it.
and that's kind of like where Matt comes in, because he loves to just throw this back in our faces about how this will never work and it doesn't ever work, and here's all the stats.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, they're like, well, we need more bucks to live. And it's like, well, we have too many deer in general, and it doesn't really make a dent. Like with the hunting, even the amount of hunters going down right now. If you look at 3 years ago, that NDA report just came out, and they compared 3 years ago, like 2021 season to 2024 season. So it's a year backlogged because they're still collecting stuff from this year. But we're already shooting 50,000 less bucks over that, like comparing those 2 years of a 3 year gap. So like that's a bigger change than the one buck tag even is. And it's just from loss.
I forget what the harvest is at, but I mean, it's still well under 10% of hunters are shooting 2 bucks. I mean,
well, one of the stats, and Matt, I know I don't know how closely you were watching the meeting, but one of the stats that came up in the meeting a couple of different times was that, like, the amount of deer, and I don't know if it was from the 2025 season or the 2024 season, it's probably 2024, but the number of bucks that were killed on the second tag was the same or more than the total number of bucks that were harvested in the entire state of Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So that seemed to be significant.
We're a deer factory compared to Indiana.
Have you hunted Indiana?
I have.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough state.
And you know, that's one of the hard things too, is like, and this is kind of like what I was getting at as far as like where I was kind of like, you know, and I was really hoping that Nate was going to be on here because he'd been to a few more meetings, and he said that the tables have really turned with what is, you know, Josh and Jordan and Elliot and these guys have been doing with getting people to the meetings, is where it used to be all anti-hunters, or it used to be all these old guys, and now this time there was a couple of old guys, there was a couple of anti-hunters, and then the rest of them were, you know, giving all of these stats, giving all of this information. And again, it's really hard for me because it feels like we are in this echo chamber, right? So you talk to the people that you want to talk to and all this stuff. But the hard part is that the two guys that spoke, and I wish I knew more about how the meeting was run, because I wish I would have known, like, as this guy was talking, I could have went and put in a card, because both of the guys that spoke basically said, if you didn't have 300 or 3,000 acres, you couldn't find a deer on public land. There was no deer to be had. There was no 8 points on public land. There was no deer to be had. And like, my blood was like boiling, and like, yeah. I wanted to go on record. Like, I had, like, in my head, like, I was like drafting this statement to say, like, I want to go on record in front of the Natural Resources Commission and say that I am the world's worst bow hunter. And just like right now, when you're saying, have I been to Indiana? Like, it didn't take us but a day to get on bucks in Indiana. Like, every state that I've hunted in, like, we've been able to get on bucks like very easily. You know, I mean, with a little bit of work.
A lot of those guys that are speaking up and they're mad about it or whatever, enough to the point where they're going to show up to the meeting, is that they're probably sitting that same one stand on public land they've set 20 years, and things have changed. And so they're not seeing deer anymore from that one stand. Well, they need to learn how to adapt, like the deer have adapted and moved around, you know.
The hunting game's changed a lot too. Look at the equipment we have now and the technology. I mean, trail cameras played a huge role in that. We've got mobile setups that are great. We're not nailing 2x4s on the trees anymore and hunting one stand like we all grew up doing. Like, the game's changed, no doubt about it.
Yeah, most people have adapted as needed, but not everybody.
But also, still, I respect the tradition side of things too. Like, I mean, people have their deer camp and they go out and hunt the same stand. I love that. Like, I've got a blind up in Macomb County. I love gun hunting that stand opening day. Like, I love that place.
But I was going to say, and you know, for the listener, just for full transparency, we are talking to, you know, the 1%. These guys both tagged out on bucks here in Michigan, and they're sitting up there on their high horse saying, "Don't take that away from me," because
Well, my thing is,
Absolutely.
I talk with Josh Arbogast, and we argue back and forth all the time from the stuff that I stirred the pot with him. But I was telling him, I was like, in a few years, you're gonna want that second buck tag, because it's not every year that I'm gonna fill it or anybody else, but it's if you say that this is gonna actually improve the quality that much, well, we're a deer factory here compared to other states with just the amount of deer that even with the amount of bucks that everybody complains about we're shooting, they just come back every year because we just keep kicking them out with our habitat and our doe numbers, And so, sure, maybe you shoot a few less bucks, there's gonna be more on the landscape. Well, they're gonna be itching to shoot to shoot two of them.
So
Just to build on that too, sorry to cut you off, Adam. I just see, I think the argument that there's no big bucks out there. Like, man, I hunt a lot of different properties, public, private. There's good deer on all of them. It just depends what your lens is. Like, I feel like the 5 different counties I hunt, there's a 3.5-year-old buck at least on a single one on every place I hunt. There's good deer here. You just got to put the work in to find them. So,
yeah, and I think that narrative is changing. That Michigan is the laughing stock, and I think it used to be that way because of that we didn't have the big deer or whatever, and whether it's social media being able to showcase what's happening or like the landscape of the actual hunter is changing, or whatever. But I would agree with you that there's plenty of deer. There's plenty of good, quote unquote, good deer in Michigan. However, I would think that of all of the states, right? And, Matt was, going ballistic in the last week of these studies about, the top age class deer, harvest and whatever for yearling, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, whatever in Michigan wasn't even on the map. But I would say the top 2/3 of deer hunting states, if you were to poll all of them and you were to say, satisfaction rating from the hunter, I think Michigan would probably land towards the bottom. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know. I feel like it used to. I think 10 years ago, yeah, where you saw a huge harvest of 1.5-year-old bucks. I'm not sure we'd see that. I bet there's been an uptick. I just don't know what kind of uptick that would be. You'll watch Michigan buck pull all fall. There's some really good deer shot here. A lot more than it used to be. So.
I know a lot of guys are in Michigan buck pull every day, hoping the one on their trail camera doesn't show up, and it's because they know there's big bucks out there that they're chasing, and other people probably know about it with the trail cameras now. So, and you watch that all fall, and it's like the amount of people that are posting and like, oh, this is a 200-pounder. This one was one. I was looking today, and they were posting some of their big bucks for my county and stuff, and it was like a 158, a 146, and it's like this is Michigan, and that's becoming kind of like with social media and that education and then peer pressure, that does more work than government restrictions ever will, and it just kind of like keeps edging it up, and everybody wants this like fast. They want to take that GLP-1, the fast pill, and they don't want to do the work, and it's way better overall to just like put in that work and slowly grow. And that's what I was saying with like that study they put out with the age class, like the top 5 states with the most matured bucks being shot were all multi-buck tag states. And like the number one, like they're like, how does Oklahoma do it and keep the top the last 5 years? Well, the last decade or whatever, they said we're going to place education above restrictions and educate the hunters on what they need to do, what they need to shoot, whatever. And they saw that dramatic increase without changing the regulations. Everybody can still get 2 buck tags, and they can still shoot multiple does, and that's what they're doing, and it works. And they had And I was at Everland Outdoors. They're Michigan guys. And they had on a guy from Oklahoma that was hired for the Turtle Creek Club up north in Michigan. And for the past 20 years, he's been the guy managing their place, telling them like what to do and what to shoot and whatever. And he took that place to like, they're averaging 150s in northern Michigan, you know. Granted, that's a huge chunk of private property that they have everybody on the same page with, but it was like, okay, we're going to meet, we're going to have these seminars, educate each other, we're going to peer pressure each other, hold each other accountable. Number one thing, we're going to shoot a buttload of does. And then their option to shoot a second buck tag is still there. They don't hold each other to one buck tag, or they hold each other at first to an APR, and then with that second one, they were using it as like a call tag and shooting things that didn't have brow tines and stuff like that, because they're, you know, being northern Michigan, some guys get into that. But they took their standards just like to the next level in a spot that you don't really hear about it from.
So a couple of things there. One, and I was going to get to you that with that education piece, because I think that that's like super important. But the hard part there, I think, is twofold. Like, one, I'd be very interested to know like what the hunting culture is in Oklahoma, where it was before they started this education. And with me, no matter what's happening, whether it be, you know, in hunting, trying to teach my daughter something, trying to work with the people at work, you know, trying to implement something, you know, that I'm doing at the Bowman's Club, anything like that, there has to be some sort of a proof of concept, right? And at some point you have to implement something that's small to get to that proof of concept to kind of build this momentum, right? And so coupling Michigan's hunting culture, where maybe we can hope that some of that will age out in kind of like what we're seeing now, and things are kind of like moving in the right direction. But are they continuing to educate, and, you know, the ones that aren't aging out, are they teaching their next generations? You know, where is that? So next, like, how do you, like, at what point can you build into like the education into the bureaucracy, which I think is a terrible thing to say. Like, the last thing I want is more bureaucracy. However, like, how do you mandate that sort of education? And that's what I mean is like, how do you get this education, proof of concept? Like, how do you get people to buy in without forcing them to?
Yeah. And I think they voted in last year to start doing a piece of the hunter safety to educate on the importance of shooting does. And so I think that's starting to like trickle in. So that was like one of the best things that came out of the NRC lately, at least, was that change. Like, anybody now younger, like coming into hunting, has sit through hunter safety, and now there's a portion of it that'll talk about the importance of shooting does, and that's really what we have an issue with here. And so I think that's like a tiny little baby step, and we need to add on to it. You know, like QDMA, when they were doing the huge push for APRs, they were getting people together and having seminars and doing all sorts of stuff, and they got a lot of people on board with that. And that was all hunter driven, which is good, whichever way you need to go about it. Maybe some Bowman's Club will have a nonprofit or something and have these seminars and have speakers come and talk about it. But yeah, there needs to be some kind of initiative. The problem is the DNR doesn't have funds as is. So how do they have funds to put into marketing and education like that?
I think probably one of the best tools we have is social media. And I hate saying that because social media is generally, I'm not a huge fan of it. However, I think that's really changed the game a lot. I mean, especially for young hunters, right? You look at Michigan buck poll in late October, early November. Man, there's a lot of big deer down. Like, I think all of us want to shoot deer like that. So to know that they're out there is a good tool to educate people. Like, yeah, if I'm willing to pass a deer, you know, I can shoot a bigger deer, right? There's always that opportunity. So.
So my question is this, you talk about the APR guys and everything that they did. And, essentially those guys put in a decade of their life beating their heads against the wall, getting their dicks kicked in. And then they said, you know what? We're done. We're fighting an uphill battle, right? And
Yeah, but in the legislature of forcing it statewide, but they're still managing their own properties that way, and that's still legal for them to do so. So,
well, I
was
mean,
it really
I can,
harm done?
well, but I can tell you this, like, so my property is in the UP, so the UP has antler point restrictions, 3 on the side. Our property in the UP has been doing that since I was 14 was the first year that we did it. So 30 years, and it has showed very little improvement. Because I mean, there's the neighbors on either side do it, but there's a property in the middle that shoots everything. And then there's 3 miles of state land behind us. So, and I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that it, at least in that area, in that microcosm, it wasn't enough to move the needle. Mm-hmm. And we have been doing it. So,
but when you look at like the stats for Michigan, and that's kind of why Josh is he's team 1 buck instead of APRs now, because the stats they put out are that 75% of hunters are shooting 6 point or bigger already. And it was like 60% almost are 8 point or bigger. Now, what we don't do is we don't measure age class, like some states do, and we should. But it's just DNR funding, and you got to have more people in the field and take more stats and 2 samples and all that. So it's not going to happen unless you pour the money into it.
Well, I think this, right? So I think that I guess if you're looking at like strictly like a APR, there's a lot more on that side. Like, okay, you are going to manage for age class. There, I can speak from experience on this, both hunting where we do for our deer camp, because there's been multiple deer that I've not shot because I can't identify them, or I thought I was hunting on the other side of the road and I wasn't, and that sort of thing. But there's plenty of deer at our camp that have lived because we didn't know if they had brow tines or not, or they didn't have enough points or whatever. So there are deer that live from that. But I will always err, just because of me being a deer hunter, being sentimental, I guess. I will always err on the side of 1 buck, simply because it could be your first hunt or your last hunt.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take that away from anybody. And I'm not saying like, because I really, there's that argument of like, oh, there's the one guy who only gets to hunt 1 time, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't really care. Shoot a doe. Like, but it's your grandpa's last hunt. He's 90 years old. The deer's out there and he can't shoot it because doesn't have enough points or something. Like, and I'm, if you listen to this podcast enough, that I'm the guy that wants you to shoot everything so that we can go celebrate and drag it out of the woods. Like, that's what I love. So that's where I would live. And prior to any of this, like all things being equal, I think if it were on the table, so that's the problem, right? So social media says we should do this and we should do that and we should do this and I want this and I think this is the best. But the reality of it is like these are our options, right? Do we want something better? Like, I think if you want to keep $2, great. But I think one of the things that Michigan does a poor job at is they give you both of your buck tags at the same time. So you can shoot an 8 point on day 1 and a spike on day 180 because that's how long our season is, right? So, like, I think that you should get your second tag after you shoot your first deer. So you have to shoot something bigger with the second tag. But right now, being the way that it is, I think overall people want to see some sort of change. We understand that it's on a 3-year cycle, and this is that proof of concept, right?
So Adam, you brought up a couple really good points there. The first is like, kind of the compromise. And to me, like, I'm not really in favor of $1 because of the lack of opportunity. However, if there was like a split season, like Wisconsin or Missouri, where you could go like, yep, you get a tag in bow season essentially, and then you can hunt still in gun season. I mean, that's great. That still keeps people in the woods. My fear of going to a $1 is like, I shoot a deer on October 15th or shoot on October 25th. I'm done. Then you know who benefits from that? Illinois when I go there, or Iowa or Kansas or South Dakota or all these other states that I hunt. Like, there's no benefit. Like, that's keeping me out of the woods, and I don't like that. And that's what makes me nervous. Like, I think if we lose opportunity, it's gonna come back and really bite us for the sake of shooting bigger bucks. And that's my biggest gripe with the $1 thing. I don't think we don't have clear goals and objectives on what we're trying to get to. Is it just big bucks? Or are we trying to like recruit more hunters or trying to make better hunting opportunities here? I just haven't seen that like well thought through yet, other than, if we go to $1, we shoot bigger bucks. Absolutely. If we go to a $1 rule, we will kill bigger bucks here. But what's the cost, and what are we going to lose from that? So
I think, again, back to, from the biology standpoint, from the conservation standpoint, the whole idea, and especially with, all of the information that Jordan Hoover has brought forth from the UP, is if there are more does and they're going into heat all the time, and there's all these bucks running around running themselves to death, and that was the doe with the bow, we need to kill more does. And the whole idea is if you're going to shoot less bucks, or you're only seeing does, then you need to shoot these does, is to somewhat manage or try to offset your buck to doe ratio, where right now there's a bazillion does to every buck, right?
Yeah, but this is a ratio, and it's simple math. And so we have too many deer, as is. And your ratio is bucks to does. Well, you don't need to really shoot less bucks. You just need to increase the other number of that ratio, because there's only 2 variables there. So you just need to shoot more does. We don't.
But you already can. So that's the thing, right? So 96% of hunters, I think it's around 4% of hunters, somewhere ballpark, plus or minus a couple percent every year, shoot 2 bucks. You can still shoot 10 does here in most counties, except for the UP, obviously. We're still not doing it. So it's not like those opportunities aren't already knocking on the door. They're there. All you can do is buy a license. Hunters aren't doing it. And I don't think going to $1 is going to change that. I'm not going to go out on November 7th and shoot a doe. Like, that ain't happening. So
most of the guys that shoot 2 bucks are shooting more than 2 deer as well. So they're shooting their portion of the does as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know that really changed the amount of does being shot.
So let's just, again, so I'll play devil's advocate on your argument, Matt. Do you have those do you have the number of like extra bucks that were shot like in 25?
The extra, what they claim is the 6%.
Yeah. Like, how many bucks was that?
It would be 30.
6% of 152,000 or something, right?
Okay. And so what was that over the total harvest?
They're saying it's 6% of the total harvest. It's the way they get their huge 35,000 number.
Okay, so 6% of the total
6%
harvest.
of total harvest numbers.
Total buck harvest?
It ended up being
total harvest.
No, it was total harvest.
Okay. Well, that's fine. But you extrapolate that over those 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 100,000 extra bucks.
Yeah, and
right?
my point was
but you're putting those back into the pool, so that has to do something to your buck to doe ratio.
Yes.
So over the let's just call it over this experiment, right? So over, so the regulations you can change them every 3 years. So if you try this for 3 years, that 35,000 times 3 is roughly 100,000 extra bucks. So that has to do something to the buck to doe ratio.
Only if we can actually carry that capacity of that many more deer. Because that's the other part, is if you just have, okay, you take away that buck tag, now less deer are shot in general, because a lot of people probably, this is all theory that they'll shoot a doe instead of a second buck. So what if the total population isn't going down, it's just going up because there's less total deer being shot now?
I mean, to Adam's point, Adam's not wrong. I mean, it's a sheer gross change in numbers. Yeah. Now, where you might see a hit in that is like you've got, I forget what percent of hunters are successful at shooting a buck. Somewhere around 40%, right? Usually 40, 50% from what I remember. That means you've still got half the hunters out there that haven't shot one. So you may end up having some of that extra, 100,000 bucks that you've got running around get cropped off in that. So it's not like a net gain. There's definitely going to be a bump up. No doubt about it, right? You shoot, if you shoot less bucks, there will be more in the future. No doubt. I don't think you can argue that.
Yeah, and then, some of those hunters who are not shooting bucks, you're right. They may be shooting bucks, and we may have and then if those hunters are shooting bucks or you're having a higher success rate, then maybe that could be more hunter recruitment. Like maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, depending on what side of the fence you're on, right?
No doubt we need more hunters. That's not even negotiable. We are losing hunters, which means we're losing ground.
But like I say, if you put another 100,000 bucks out there, and now we're having a higher success rate. Now you're seeing all your buddies. Hey, I never used to see any deer. I'm seeing bucks all the time. Well, hey, I want to get back into hunting. It just seems to be something that would.
But yeah, it could increase hunter satisfaction. You talked about that before. Hunter satisfaction is probably, I'm not sure. I'm guessing low to lower third, whatever. It's probably low. I think it's low in most places. It could bump that up, which is not a bad thing. I mean, we want hunters happy, right? Regardless of where. But that should be a key management.
At the end of the day, like what? I guess, Matt, what would you have happen in May? Because they're saying, okay, and I forget what their things were, but they said, okay, we want to have, better. I can't even remember but they had like 5 things that they set out to do.
Yeah, the NRC is trying to change their goals, and they're basically all the talking points of a 1 buck tag system. It's kind of what the talking points that they say, this is what this is going to do. And hopefully it does if that goes through, because it all sounds good. But to me, it's all like, in theory, they'll shoot a doe instead of a second buck. I would rather have earn a second buck tag. So like you still have the opportunity, and then you have an incentive to go and actually shoot that doe to get your buck tag. Or like Iowa has a program where you shoot 2 does. I think it's the landowner, but you shoot 2 does, and then the next season, you get another buck tag on top of your, so you would have 2 buck tags. So if we have something like that to incentivize the doe harvest even more, that keeps people in the field hunting, that gets them to actually shoot those does and not just like theoretically maybe they'll shoot a doe. That would be my.
What about places like Northern Michigan and UP that you don't really need to promote doe harvest? They just don't have the numbers. So yeah, I think it works in places where you have high doe populations. But having spent a lot of my life in the UP hunting, I wouldn't necessarily promote a lot of doe harvest in some of those areas. And I'm sure Adam can talk about that too. So
I have like a really skewed idea of like the UP, right? So I've hunted Stonington Peninsula, and it was like rut time. So there was no issue finding deer, and that's one of like the wintering areas. So I wasn't down there when they were wintering, but there was no shortage of deer. And then our camp is in Menominee County that has historically had more deer than anywhere else in the UP. So, for me, there was times where you'd see 30 deer in a sit. And then there was years where we didn't see so many deer, but there's always been deer in the UP. And especially for us, we're right on the border of Wisconsin. So there's deer between us and the tavern. You'll see 100 deer.
Yeah, that's actually not too dissimilar from where I'm from, the eastern UP. I grew up in the ag region there, so we've got pretty good deer numbers in parts of it. Central UP is different. You get to Schoolcraft County, Luce County, those are pretty low deer areas. So and it fluctuates. You get a few mild winters, things go up, blow up, but you got a pile of deer. I think one of the reasons I've struggled, and I brought up opportunities earlier, and you kind of talked about travel in the UP. So if we have a 1 buck rule, right? I think you live downstate and you hunt in some of these areas as well. Like, what do you do? Like, for me to hold out on not burning a buck tag until I go to Chippewa County, that's just not going to happen. So I'm like, I've got this farm up there I manage, and I love doing the habitat work. There's not a lot of incentive for me to go to the UP just to deer hunt. So you lose a lot of that tradition. And that's one of my fears is what's going to happen to deer camps up north if you can't hunt, right? You shoot a deer because you got great ground in southern Michigan or central Michigan where you shoot a deer in bow season. You go to deer camp to hang out, but you can't deer hunt. That's kind of a weird deal. Are we going to lose more hunters because of that? So that's why it'd be more fun if it was, if I had a crystal ball and I could make the choice, I'd rather see a split season. I'd rather see a tag and bow season and a tag and gun season post, or in the gun season, like similar to what Wisconsin's doing. Gives you some opportunities, and you can still enjoy the culture. Deer hunting culture is huge here. I've never seen it even close to this, like what we have here. We're really fortunate compared to a lot of other states. Deer hunting is just a hobby in a lot of places, whether that's in Kentucky or Iowa. People do it. People live for it here, and they put thousands of dollars into it and manage land and buy property for it. I don't see that a lot of other places.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's kind of ironic, and I'm going to make an assumption here, Billy, but I don't think Matt is old enough, but I think maybe you and I are maybe old enough to remember when we used to have a gun season and a bow season tag, and you'd rip them out of the thing at the hardware store, and you'd wear them on your back, and we used to have that, and then we went to the combo tag, and I've often thought about that. It wouldn't be a terrible thing to go back to that either. But again, we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to do something. And so we're kind of stuck to what's on the table. And I think what's, for good or bad. And I guess if, in a month or
2 months,
well, not really.
A month it gets proposed. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a month, if you can garner the troops, if you can get your lobby together, if you can go there, if you can put something together eloquently enough and have enough people get behind it, get in the ear of the committee to have it debated well enough, perhaps we could get something like this. But I think at this point, everybody that's just been there poo-pooing everything online and saying, oh, blah, 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 just belly aching and not going and making change, is just going to be that much more angry. There was the one guy who said, well, I'm just going to leave Michigan. I'm never going to hunt here again.
See, people say that, but I don't think that many people leave Michigan. It's you're in the bubble, and so all your friends are leaving Michigan. But when you look at the stats, it's not.
Yeah, most hunters don't. I get that. I think Adam and I
hunters do not.
Are unique in that sense. Most don't. It's getting more popular, but still, it's a small fraction. So.
The funniest part about it is that, I grew up hunting, from the first October 1st since I was 12. Well, it's first September 15th since I was 12. And it was never about killing bucks. We did not have a buck killing culture at all. We killed does and does and does and does and does. And then once I was introduced to going and hunting out of state, which was like 2014, I think. I don't think that there's been a year since 2014 that I haven't hunted out of state, at least one state. In many years, it's been multiple states. And I say that to even go kind of like cement this whole idea that, like, when I go out of state, the hunting is so much easier than it is here in Michigan. And I always concede that when I hunt out of state, all I have to do is go hunting. So there's no home life pulling me one way or the other. But to get on deer, to find deer, I feel like, we hear people talk about it, and it's one thing that, quote unquote, we don't get to see in Michigan is deer doing what deer are supposed to do, when the ratios are right, when there's not the million hunters, when there's not 10,000 does. It's just a completely different experience. And
I feel like the last couple of years, so we were hunting in like a CWD zone, and they opened it up to like, you can shoot anything on any tag, which they almost already were on this family property. But then it really became any deer you see get shot. And since that, and then they've changed it back to like regular tags these past couple years, we've seen that. Like, the rut has been on and it's been strong, and it's because we kind of like whacked back our local population, and it's phenomenal. And I hope that everybody else, like, kind of like you're saying, like, you go out of state and you see it. Once you see that, you want to be a part of it every year and see it every year. It is cool. But the last few years, like, it's been better and better, and we've been seeing bigger and bigger bucks here with that little bit of management of like whacking back the deer herd, like our local populations, and it's been great. So it's
kind of funny you brought that up. I was talking to our mutual friend Corey before this, and like, we've both been hunting out of state for a long time. I think I started hunting out of state in like 2008 in Kentucky, and I feel like the early days of hunting out of state were really good, like super easy. You could get away with stuff, and that game's kind of changed. It's been weird to see, like, out of state's not as easy as it used to be. It's harder to find places. Right now we have Onyx. There are no secret places. There's people generally everywhere at some point. Every place alone. And the hunting's gotten better here, kind of weird. So it's like, I spent all this time traveling out of state. And similar to you, Adam, like, I go to at least one state every year, and that's my time away. Like, that's my therapy time. I get to just go hunt, which I have little kids. This is a pretty rare thing anymore. So I always enjoy that. And you do still get to see some really cool stuff and some great deer and some cool places and all that. But the hunting's gotten pretty good here too. So kind of, sometimes when I'm leaving out of state and I've still got a buck tag or two here, it's like, man, I don't know if I should be leaving. I still got some good deer here to chase around too. And it's kind of frustrating if I go to Ohio and get my butt kicked for a week or something.
So, Billy, one of the things that they mentioned at the meeting, and for you from the fish side, right, is they say fish have APRs, right? So they have to be this big to keep them. We got slot limits. We got all sorts of things. So in this management idea experiment, where do APRs fall? Where should APRs fall? Not from the hunter standpoint, but from the biologist standpoint.
Yeah, you get a bump in your class. I mean, basically, and APRs work. The data suggests that, regardless of what the state it is. I mean, we have it here, right? The Northwest lower 13 that have APRs. Look at the changes we've seen there. You get a change in your class. Pennsylvania's got some great data on that, right? They've got a really long historic data set of harvest. And essentially, you basically get a change from either, primary 1.5-year-old harvest to a 2.5-year-old average harvest, or a 3.5-year-old. So yes, you get a structural change in your age class within your herd, no doubt. So
does that I mean, outside of like hunter satisfaction, outside of like trophy animal, if we're removing that, because everybody and that's the big thing. Like, you guys just want to be trophy hunters. You just want bigger deer. You just want, I don't care about that. I just want to shoot my buck. I just want, we're not the same. Because that's some of these guys that are the loudest on the internet are saying, all you guys want to do is just, shoot these big deer. What does it do for the health of the herd, the health of the resource, if we're just going to call it that, the product?
Probably not a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. That I haven't read any studies in a while, but the last time I kind of dug into that, I was like, year-and-a-half-old bucks still breed does, especially when you have high deer density areas. So a mature buck, yeah, he's going to get every doe that comes in heat first, but if you've got 50, 60 deer per square mile, there's still a lot of opportunities for other does that come in heat that aren't going to be bred by that mature buck. So I don't think you're biologically changing much. You're catering to the hunter at that point. You're not making any meaningful management change. So, and to be completely honest, like, I love shooting big bucks, right? We've talked about this. I am so over the big buck craze, though, and the older I get, the more ornery I get about it. Like, I just don't care. Like, shoot what makes you happy. That's where I'm at in life. This past year, I actually posted some deer on Facebook. It's the first time I've posted one that I've harvested in like 5 years. I share, to me, like, it's a personal journey. I know everybody wants to be famous on Instagram, and we all want to be influencers and big buck killers. Like, well, most of us aren't going to do that. I'm not good enough. I'll never be there. I'm not worried about that. Right? We need to think about what makes us happy. Like, at the end of the day, like, be happy with what you're doing. Enjoy the harvest along the way. Like, and focus on that. Like, there's a handful of buddies that are really close. Like, those are the people that mean the most to me in the deer hunting world. Like, and I encourage them. Like, I hope they shoot the biggest bucks, no bigger than me. Like, because I want to go there and help them drag them out and be there to celebrate and enjoy that. Why are we missing that? We're so worried about killing a booner and killing these 150s and giant deer and, whatever we have to do. And we lose relationships and we impact our lives while we're trying to kill big deer. At the end of the day, it's just a stupid deer. Like, I've killed, I don't know how many, well over 100 deer. I've killed a lot of deer. Like, just cool it and relax and enjoy the process, because someday it's going to be gone. And, bring new hunters along the way. Bring your kids. Like, to me, like, I think about that pile of dead bucks in the barn, like the most meaningful one, and I throw all of them away, except for the one I killed my kids last year. It was a 2.5-inch spike. It was like, I can use dope tag on them. Like, that's the most meaningful deer out of all of them I've got. I've shot some great deer. Like, just focus what makes you happy.
So, Matt, we have had a crazy amount of experiments here with muzzle loaders and opening up all the seasons. We've had the CWD. We've had, just about everything under the sun to try to get hunters to kill more deer. And for lack of trying, everything has essentially failed. It's been a failure, right? So what do you think, I guess, do you think that the one buck would change any of it? Do you think that moving the gun season will affect any of it? Do you think, changing muzzleloader back to a muzzleloader will change any of it? Like, all of the things that we want to do to kind of let more bucks live. But I guess those take away opportunities to kill those that we're not doing anyways. So where in your mind, because you're the devil's advocate and you're the loudest one beating the drum saying we suck, in the most statistical way, how do we fix that?
I think that brings it back to that. Like, we definitely have to have the education, and somehow we have to get the youth and all these younger hunters involved to get our hunter numbers up in total. I mean, when we were killing the biggest deer in Michigan, it was when we had almost 1 million hunters in the woods, and we were whacking the population of deer back. as much as people, it's nice to see deer when you're out there. If you look at all these other trophy states, look at their deer population, it is less than half of our state deer population. So there's just less deer, so there's more food, more habitat. When Meat Eater had that antler guy on, and he was a biologist studying, it was for mule deer specifically, but they were like happy about winter die-offs because that whacked the deer back in that population pocket to where a few years later, now those does that survived that winter are the healthiest they're ever going to be, and they're going to have the healthiest fawns they're ever going to have because they have the most food and habitat available to themselves. And all of a sudden, you've got these giant deer. And people just need to be educated on that. Like, we're at an unhealthy level of deer. We need to whack it back and down. And all these other states are starting to deal with it too. Like everybody's always like, well, Indiana's one buck and they have bigger bucks. Okay, but their overall harvest is trending down. Their overall numbers of hunters are trending down just like ours. Pennsylvania, same thing. And guess what they're starting to do? They added Sunday hunting. They added late doe season. And they're trying to move their rifle season up to match ours to kill more deer. So I don't think moving our season around is really going to affect it. Like, you're still going to have the same amount of hunters in the woods on opening day at firearm, whether it's the 15th or the 22nd or the 30th or whatever. Like, there's so many people in the woods kicking deer around. It's not going to matter. You're still going to kill a lot of deer that day, and that's good. We need to have that. I think one of the things we need to open back up, probably baiting. Like, you're not enforcing it anyways, as is. So, like, it's kind of just free reign anyway. Open that up, allow people to do it, allow the youth to do it. We allow handicap already. We allow these sharpshooters to do it when they want to come in, kill a bunch of deer in one weekend efficiently. Why aren't we utilizing that to help get our population down? Now everybody's like, oh, it's because of CWD. Well, all these other states are rolling back CWD right now because they slightly slowed the spread, but they're not stopping it. So Missouri just opened back up. I just listened to the Illinois biologist over the weekend. He said they're going to roll back their regulations. Kentucky, there's a couple other states that are like, just, we can't beat it. Throw it out the window. Bring back baiting. Bring back whatever. They're starting to open back up. So I think we might as well, since any gas station you go to in fall, like, they're selling out of corn and carrots and apples anyway. Like, it's not, you don't hear people getting tags for it, getting wrote up for it now. It's not being enforced. You might as well just, like, open the gates and utilize it more efficiently. And then that can help with, like, supplementing if you want bigger bucks too. And then I think really the muzzleloader, the way it is, I know there's a lot of people that are mad about it with rifles being allowed, but it did what it was supposed to do. The amount of deer getting killed in that week has gone up. Some people are mad that, yes, we killed 2,000 more bucks than we did last year because now rifles are allowed. Well, we also killed like 5,000 more does. Okay, and that's the only, when you break down per season, the buck doe ratios, muzzleloader is the only one that's like 2 does to 1 buck. It's the best season there is right now for the buck doe ratio. Archery's the worst. It's like 0.3. Like, archery hunters suck. Really, when you look at
Not all
conservationists, as conservationists, they're like terrible on a stat sheet.
Well, but I think one of the things that I guess I would argue, and I have a different kind of like take on that, or maybe like a caveat, would be like, during archery season, like, you, and I think it goes to my like second point, but you have
so much time,
6 months left,
yeah,
essentially. And so that's why, you're either going to shoot your buck early or maybe take a doe early, but it seems like if you still have those deer on trail cameras, you're trying to figure it out, you're not going to shoot one of those does, and then next thing you know, you're into pre-rut and rut, and then like he said, you're not going to shoot a doe on November 7th, so then you're just waiting because of all the time that you have left. But my question would be, what you're talking about with the harvest numbers and muzzleloader being the best, right? And understandably, like fully understanding, unless, like I said, somebody is really sandbagging and they're going to bring 1 million people to this next meeting and they're going to say, hey, this is the next thing. We're kind of running what you brung at this point. They're going to be voting on what's on the table, right? But the most deer are killed like the opening weekend of firearm season, right? Like the numbers are staggering.
Yeah, it's like
correct.
Yes.
So my question would be, because that muzzleloader season or like extended rifle season or whatever is so long, but it is the best as far as buck to doe ratio. I'm curious if we were to do something like Ohio does and have like a 3 or 4 day muzzleloader season instead of, people getting guys to say, well, I'm going to go later. Maybe I'll go later. To try and get like another big harvest on one weekend where you had a whole bunch more people in the woods. I wonder if that would be, just as effective, and you'd be able to, and you could do that with all weapons, whatever. And then you could go to a primitive weapon season after that.
That'd be really interesting to try. I mean, essentially create like a second opening day or an opening day kind of culture. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if our muzzleloader season was 3 days. I mean, a lot of states do that, where it's a really short duration.
Correct.
That'd be fun to try. Yeah. I mean, personally, I've really enjoyed the late season hunting, and particularly the late antlerless season hunting that we have now. Is like, it just takes the pressure off. It's different, right? I mean, most of us have our freezers full at that point, so you can go shoot does to donate, or it's something to look forward to. Because there's not a lot going on in Michigan in late November or December when our muzzleloader seasons are. Like, we don't have enough ice for ice fishing yet. It's starting to get cold and miserable, so it's kind of a dreary time. So like that's why I've really enjoyed that late season. I've been leaning more and more of those the last couple of years.
Yeah, I have too, because the pressure's off at that point. I mean, because a lot of those hunters that's still traditional opening weekend of firearm season. It gets hammered, and then by the time muzzleloader starts, that's when I like it, because it's cold. So all the guys that don't like being cold, they're not in the woods, and so that takes some of the pressure off. And then the deer too don't seem as pressured anymore. They've kind of died down from that really jittery, just like running like crazy that first week.
Yeah, I know. I kind of felt that with I hunted more of that late antlerless season last year than ever before. Man, it was a blast. I loved it. It's like there's no pressure. There's no bucks to shoot. I'm already out of tags anyway. Like, I can just go out and doe hunt. Like, man, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. I was the only one out there. I remember hearing like
hunting from the ground late season.
Yeah, I got to like still hunt and had a great hunt. One day I shot a couple does. I went and hunted one of my favorite gun blinds and shot a couple does in like an hour. And it's like, it's fun. Like, what else do I have going on in December? And it's great. And those are deer that were donated for a good cause. In an area that has way too many deer. This one farm I hunt is the only one that shoots any does off there out of the 5 of us that hunt it. Like, it's a great time to like fill some doe tags. There's no pressure. It's good and cold, so good for hanging deer, whatever. And yeah, it's really a lot of fun.
So kind of circling back to like the root of the, podcast, kind of like whatever for this whole one buck thing, like, I guess what are and I'll let you kind of both speak on it, but like, what are the pros and cons? Like, what are the major like cons or the things to worry about that may be unforeseen?
You want to go first? You want me to?
I don't care. Go ahead if you wanted to.
All right. I think there's pros to it, right? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, sure, it'd be great if there's bigger bucks running around. We've also got some really good deer running around right now. If we go to 1 buck, there will be bigger bucks, and we will shoot more big bucks, no doubt. Is that really where we want to go, though? Is that what we need as hunters? I'm not convinced that's the answer. Like, it's just a buck. Shoot another one next year, a couple next year, whatever. Like, I don't think that's going to get us to where we need to be, right? We need to focus on retaining hunters that we have. We're losing them like crazy, and recruiting new opportunities for new hunters too. So I don't like the idea of a restricted access, and it's not just a personal thing. Like, I'm concerned about it from like a hunting culture thing. Like, the more hunters we keep out of the woods, it's not going to help our cause for the sake of a few of us to shoot bigger bucks. Like, that's got the wrong tone to it. It's not going to work from that sense. Yeah, we'll shoot some big deer along the way, but I'm like, if we're going to lose hunters and people don't get to go to their deer camp for gun season anymore, or don't have a camp in the UP, like, why would I have a deer camp in the UP if I'm going to shoot? I'm also going to hunt in southern Michigan or lower Michigan, where I'll probably shoot a deer in bow season. Like, I'm concerned about that. But from a biological standpoint, it doesn't change a herd anymore. I don't think it's going to impact our doe harvest. I know we're making that argument. It's like, yeah, people are going to shoot 1 buck, and then they're going to go back out and shoot 1 doe. They're going to go doe hunting. Man, you can do that now. Nobody hardly does it until late season. And even that's a pretty minimal impact.
And that's where I'm at. Is I'm more of a, like, show me the numbers to convince it, and it seems like it's more of a theoretical. Like, well, if they only have 1 buck tag, then theoretically, that 0.2 is going to become a doe. That's like 1.2 deer per hunter average or whatever.
I think we just can't get a big buck hunter. And I'm a big buck hunter. Like, I'm speaking to myself. I understand I'm going to get burned out of state. There's more hunting than just shooting big bucks. We're missing the point.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to push people from, they're going to shoot their 1 buck here, and then all of a sudden, all these states around us that start putting in non-resident caps, they're going to hit them pretty quick, because people are going to shoot their 1 buck here and travel. And
I know I will personally, like, for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to hurt our local economy here, and they're going to be gaining from it. So
I think too, I don't, the clamps are coming down on non-resident hunting opportunities out of state, no doubt. Look how hard it is to draw an Iowa tag anymore. A lot of these states are, tag prices are going up and quotas are going down. Can't get a Nebraska tag hardly over the counter anymore. Ohio's just doubled their license fees. Like, this is not going to bode well, I think, if we lose opportunities here for the few of us that do want to travel and stuff.
Say, like, well, this is going to make us a destination state, and then we'll have this non-resident money coming in. Well, Illinois hit their cap for the first time ever that they've set, and that's at 25,000 non-resident hunters. We sold over 24,000 tags to non-residents here last year, as is. I mean, so we're already kind of a Midwest destination state, right up there with, one of the biggest states there is. So,
and you know what one of the biggest complaint of, going out of state and following a lot of out-of-state groups, what they complain about? Non-resident hunters. Like, I don't think that's what we want, is more people coming here. I mean, it's great. It brings a lot to the economy. I don't want to discard that at all by any means. Great for businesses or hotels or small bow and gun shops and all that stuff, but it's not going to improve our hunter satisfaction by having, instead of 25,000, 75,000 people come to deer hunt. So.
Yeah, that's like the number one complaint all these states are going through right now is non-residents.
Yeah, Missouri's going through a huge argument right now with this.
Yeah, and Matt sees it one weekend a year here. There's 30 of us hunting public land.
There's a lot of, there's a guy from Iowa, Rhode Island,
Well, think about
that deer camp.
I watched your deer camp show. I mean, that's awesome. Like, it's great that you guys get together. Would you still do it if you only had doe tags?
We killed
that's all we
8 of them last year.
Yeah, I know, but I'm like our guy's going to give up a weekend in October to go just shoot does. So.
Yeah, well, I think that's why Adam times it the way he does, because it's that early October where it's like you're basically you're not hunting the hardcore rut.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically not messing up anybody's opening day. It's not messing up anybody's pre-rut. You're just there for deer camp, and you can hunt as much or as little as you want to. And like I said, it's all about just going and dragging the deer out of the woods and tracking and all that.
Having fun, right? That's what it should be
Doesn't matter
about.
what you shoot.
Yeah, that's how I kind of like. I'm not for the limiting opportunities. Like, let's just go have fun, enjoy hunting for what it is, because it's going to be gone in 100 years if we don't do this right. So,
well, and you bring up a good point there, because Nate and I were having this conversation, back and forth, driving to the NRC meeting, and we were actually talking about that hunt, about what are we going to shoot on that hunt, like this year. Are we going to burn our 1 buck tag if it goes to 1 buck to shoot a buck with the guys on that? And, Nate, being Mr. Must Be Nice with all of his deer and properties and all that, he said he won't. And I said, well, I will. I don't care. But that's just me. I got other plans, so.
I'd fuzz an arrow. Probably wouldn't hit its mark anyway. So,
but no, guys, I really appreciate you coming on here and having this conversation. Like I said, we don't know what's going to happen in May, and I hope if there are guys out there that are rational, like you guys, that really do feel a certain way about this, that they will go to the meeting too and be heard, and maybe put some of their ideas forward, because the opposition that I saw, I was just not impressed. There was no logic to it. There was no rational argument. It was that there was no deer existed, and I feel sorry for anybody who doesn't have 300 acres or 3,000 acres, because they're never gonna get a deer, and if you pass this, I'm never hunting again. And what does that really help? And honestly, what do these commissioners care about you specifically?
yeah.
Whether you hunt here or not. It was a terrible argument or presentation.
That's
that's what I think. The argument's got to be community, but it's got to be more than just an individual change, right? It's an individual preference. So for either argument, right? I mean, I think that's the same argument that the 1 buck guys are going to have to make too, to prove it. Like, what's going to change? What are we trying to get to? Right? I mean, what is the actual goal and objective?
Yeah,
and it sounds like there's enough guys like united. The way you hear it, at least online, and at that meeting, there's enough guys that are united to like push it through, but we need to measure it and make sure that it works. And that's my thing with it, is like, yeah, I'm all for it so long as you like show me that it works.
Well, and again, and I said this the last time I had Josh on, and he's like, I want to pull all the levers, and it's like, you can't pull all the levers at once, because you don't know which one worked and which one didn't. And you could be attributing all your success to the one thing that didn't do anything, and you could pull back the one that was making the meaningful change, and you're going to be a dozen years down the road before you figure it out, So it's like I said, what really needs to happen is we have to have proof of concept, So in a perfect world, what I would see is, if this goes through, we get to see some data, we get to see some sort of meaningful change. Maybe we get to see an uptick in hunter satisfaction, and then we get to see, maybe we'll get to see some, if they do increase, like specifically one of the other things that they're talking about is the doe harvest by county or
which
DMU.
They did up until 2021.
Right. So if they go back to that, now we'll get to see some harvest numbers, and then perhaps, like you're talking about, maybe we'll get to see extra doe or extra buck tags in these areas that need it and these areas that don't. Which, that would be fine too, as long as there's some science or numbers or things behind it, But change has to start somewhere. And for all of us that say, well, we just don't want to change anything, just leave it as it is. We just sit here and pound sand and we like it the way that it sucks. Like, that's stupid. Like, that's not a good argument either.
Have this conversation the other day about, I'm becoming that grumpy old man meme from The Simpsons or whatever, like yelling at the sky. Just like any new change. I'm like, no, I don't want it.
Yeah. So like I said, I appreciate you guys coming on here and being able to like I said, I knew that Matt would be able to come on here and banter back and forth, have some fun with it, and be, like I said, rational and be able to have a conversation and not get emotional about it. And Billy, I appreciate you coming on as well and following suit. So
I enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Great time. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Don't burn me at the stake. Like, we all got opinions. None of them are right. So.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say is like, we're all men. We can have rational conversations about this and talk it out. And that's how I like to like argue back and forth to kind of like come to that final decision. And like with this, like I'm okay. If we got the unity and whatever, like, yes, we need to do something, make it that one lever though, and then see what happens. And we need to
monitor it, right? I mean, you got to have data support change. Change is not a bad thing, but you better be able to back it up. Whether that's,
So we should, revisit this the end of May after we see kind of like what happens if it doesn't get tabled right up until October, which it wouldn't surprise me if that happened either.
It's hard to say. I haven't seen from DNR where their stance is this. I mean, because there's certainly potential impact of license sales, which is a big deal to DNR. So.
Yeah. And,
I was trying to find those numbers because when I was listening to the Ohio DNR biologist, he mentioned when Pennsylvania made that change, their hunter number dropped significantly for the next like 3 years, where it was like a lot of people said, screw you guys, I'm just not gonna hunt then, and didn't buy tags, and then it built back up after that. So maybe that'll happen, maybe they're worried about it, but
I think that would get DNR's attention like really quick. And dips in license sales is a big deal. I mean, that's where a vast majority of the funding is for fishing and hunting licenses. Is that funds the agencies. That's a big chunk of change.
And that was part of the at that meeting you went to. That guy mentioned like we still don't have clear advisement on if this is a legal change or not.
Yeah, so, that guy, I think, was disgruntled. I texted you that. I was texting you that, like, I think in real time. I think he's a member of the DAT, and they got shut down, or whatever. They got told not to meet anymore, basically, because they're too busy. Like there wasn't any more for them to do, or that whoever, like the commission or whoever they were giving their information to, like couldn't handle any more from them. Essentially, is the way that I understand it. And so they just said, "Hey, you guys don't need to meet anymore this year, or whatever. You guys can go on hiatus, because we got enough stuff to deal with right now." And I think he was disgruntled, and he took it out in his 3 minutes.
Okay. So that was a big up in the air that they're like, well, don't worry, we're getting our answer from the Attorney General or whatever. And he was like, the last we heard, it's kind of still up in the air if this is a legal change or not. So it's like, this is down to the wire.
Yeah. And this, so this is just, like I said, the way that I understood that, or the way that I've understood this, and I don't know if we talked about this with Josh the last time, was that's why it had to be still a buck and doe combo license, was that they weren't changing the license, so weren't changing anything about the license. They were just changing what was available on the license.
Yeah.
So the license necessarily didn't change, but it was just like some semantics on.
Yeah.
Well, that's what.
I've had some questions on that too, so I wasn't sure. Would that sort of be like a mandatory combo license, but you get basically $1 tag with that.
Yeah, so I think that's what they were trying to do, was make it the combo tag as a buck and a doe. And I don't know if you wouldn't
be able to buy a single buck tag like you can.
Yeah, that was my follow-up question with that. Is like, can you just buy a buck tag then? Because that's what people would do. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's what, and maybe that's what he was referring to. But if it were me, I mean, and if it was quote unquote like legal, maybe they would have to vote to change the price. But I mean, wouldn't it just make sense? Like, okay, fine, you can have your $1 tag. It's going to be $40, or it's $40 for the combo tag.
I mean, that makes sense to me. But man, you look at how pissed off people get when licenses get proposed to raise $2, and people lose their mind. It's just absurd. But
they'll buy a $300 tree stand.
Oh yeah, we're all running.
Step into my world.
$1,000 in trail cameras.
Goes up by a nickel.
Yeah,
and people want to throw a fit.
Yeah, and just instead of being thankful for the opportunity we have for $20, you can go deer hunting here. You can't do anything for $20 anymore. I mean, my wife and I go out to eat. It's $80. I swear every time. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah. So, like I said, we'll have to reconvene after the May meeting and kind of talk back through this and see how it's going. But like I said, I appreciate the conversation, fellas, and yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, Evan. It's chatting.
Shot clocks, big shots, upsets, aces. TGL playoffs are here. First, Atlanta Drive starts their repeat run against Los Angeles Golf Club. Then, Rory's Boston Common Golf and Tiger's Jupiter Links face off in their playoff debuts. Who will advance? Keep up. It's playoffs. Tune in Tuesday, March 17th at 6:30 p.m. and 9 p.m. only on ESPN and the ESPN app.